Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is Lourdes on Talk Radio at 6 o'clock Friday morning. This is Jean, and I'm glad you're here. This is why I survived another one for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from Blog Talk Radio. And chat room is open. I did pop the link in there to what we were talking about for probably about the last 3 weeks. Looking at some web pages from Robert Burney on healing.about.com. And they're called Joy to You and Me. There's quite a few web pages there he's got, and if you go to the site map, you can see, if you scroll down to the very bottom of the page, you can see he's written a whole lot of stuff in it. It's really interesting material, I think, dealing with boundaries and inner child work and codependency mainly. And but just very interesting. I just kind of came across it and had never seen it before, so that's why I'm looking at it, and it's very helpful for me. So hopefully it's helping other people too. It's been a busy few weeks for me with my sweetheart who has not been well. And he's been in the hospital for almost 2 weeks now. But the week before he went into the hospital, he was toxic and he was not well. He should have gone to the hospital probably 2 weeks before he actually ended up there. So really it's been about the last month that I've been going, every night to go try to help him after work. And then when he ended up in the hospital 2 weeks ago, now I'm back and forth to the hospital. And, poor guy, he's in stage, and so, but God keeps him sustained, and that's the whole thing. He's still with us, and we only have this one day. Like I was talking to him last night, he actually is doing better, and they said he continued. Hello, everyone. I don't know. I've got a bad connection here this morning, but anyway, I got dropped from the show, so sorry about that for everybody who's in the chat room, and I appreciate everybody being here. So to make a long story short, Cecil's doing much better, and it's good to see that, and it's been a long month actually. It's been about 4 weeks, so we'll just keep going. I know I've had to cancel some evening shows and some weekend shows, and I probably have to do that again this weekend, but we'll see. I'm not sure. Tomorrow morning I should be on. But tonight I probably won't be on because I'll be at the hospital. But anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. We're looking at Robert Burney's web pages here, and that's to deal, really we were talking about internal boundaries. That was yesterday morning. And if you go to healing.about.com and you look for Joy to You and Me, just type into the search there, or Robert Burney. He's a codependency therapist, and he's a spiritual teacher. He's an author, and he's written a book called Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. So it's just awesome. It's good material, and some of the stuff he says, some of the stuff he says is just awesome. So I really like some of the stuff he has to say. It's pretty good. It just sort of rings true in my life. But he says, if I'm feeling like a failure and giving power to the critical parent voice within is telling me that I'm a failure, then I can get stuck in a very painful place where I am shaming myself for being me. And so he says, in this dynamic, I am being the victim of myself, and I'm also being my own perpetrator. And the next step is to rescue myself by using one of the old tools to go unconscious: food, alcohol, sex, etc. Thus, the disease has me running around in a squirrel cage of suffering and shame, a dance of pain, blame, and self-abuse, which is interesting. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention, I always mention this on every show, I'm not a counselor or therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my shows. So you have to listen to my shows at your own discretion. I'm talking about abuse, and it's a sensitive subject. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have an adult listen to the show with you to help you make a decision. I'm talking, young children, because children have the right to protection, and you should be safe online, and have an adult listen to the show with you to make sure it's something you should be listening to age appropriately, because there's a lot of adult content on my shows, right? So then he says, by learning to set a boundary with and between our emotional truth, what we feel, and our mental perspective, what we believe, in alignment with the spiritual truth we have integrated into the process, we can honor and release the feelings without buying into false beliefs. And so he says, the child in us has had a reason to feel like a failure. He says, because our parents weren't capable of loving themselves or of emotional honesty, we felt there was something wrong with us. And he's mainly talking about parents in this situation, but this is some other people abuse children too. So many survivors of child abuse were abused by a family member, not necessarily the parents, and not necessarily even a family member. It could have been a close family friend or someone the child knew, right? Someone the survivor knew as a child, right? And so, this works for me because my parents were both my abusers, but it wouldn't necessarily work for everybody. But what he's talking about is kind of his own story. And so he says, because our parents weren't capable of loving themselves or of emotional honesty, we felt like there was something wrong with us. And we felt responsible for the deprivation or abuse that we experienced. Now, that's some people. I never really took that responsibility on because, like I was saying before, and I talk about it quite a bit, is, I was witnessing my older siblings be abused as well and mistreated. So I was looking at them thinking, well, they weren't doing anything wrong, so my parents are just abusing them. So actually I knew where to put the blame. I wasn't confused about that. Like as a child, I knew, like, it wasn't confusing to me that my brothers were being abused and myself, because I knew we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just there in the house. And my parents were just using us for just their own personal punching bags and their own personal ways of relieving their own problems, just taking their garbage out on us, right? Which is the truth, you know what I mean? And that's, a lot of people don't like to look at that. A lot of people don't like to look at the truth and see those things, even within the family. I've got two siblings that grew up in the same home who are in denial, but they're not necessarily in denial. My parents were brought up on charges, right? We had social workers in the house, but the thing is they're still in denial because they say that, well, it wasn't that bad, and they almost don't want to. They don't want to have to deal with it. Like, they don't want to have to think about the fact that my parents were brought up on charges, and we all had to go to counseling, and there was social workers visiting, and my parents were in trouble, and so it's kind of like I think in order for them to survive this mess that we all went through, because we've had some deep conversations, my sister and I, as well as my brother, who's still living. And over the years, we're all getting older, and especially the last 20, 25 years, we've had some pretty deep conversations about what happened and stuff like that. But I've mentioned stuff like to my sister, like saying stuff like, well, it wasn't right for Dad to do what he did to Mom, and like it wasn't right for Dad to like rape Mom and stuff like that, like force himself on her. That was wrong. And then sister doesn't ever say anything like, yeah, that was not right at all or anything, because she was never trying to protect my mom. My sister was always, she's 5 years older than me, and she was always just sitting back, very quiet, trying to stay out of the mess, right? And so my other brother, who's still living today, he took off at the age of 16, so, he didn't have to run away. Nobody in our family would have had to run away because nobody would have looked for us. He just left home, and, he was gone, right? So he in his mind, he walked away from all that. And he doesn't want to revisit it. Like, he's, as much as he doesn't like what my dad did to any of us, especially, or even my mom, he talked a little bit about it, but he doesn't have, for whatever reason, my sister and my brother don't have the same feelings that I do towards the whole thing. I think it's probably because they weren't there trying to protect my mother from my dad, first of all, and they weren't there trying to protect the siblings from my dad or my mom. Like, my sister used to watch my mom beat the crap out of me and would actually encourage it. She would get me in trouble. My mom would be chasing me down with a belt and beat the crap out of me, and my sister would be watching, and she was the one that actually got me in trouble in the first place. Instead of trying to hide, sort of cover for me, she would get me in trouble. And so my sister, she's a different kind of person, you know what I mean? Like, she never saw that any of that was wrong, and that, by what my dad did to my mother and what my mother did to me was wrong. So in her mind, it's okay to abuse people. Like, excuse me, my voice is just horrible, but that's what happens when you're at the hospital for like 2 weeks. But anyway, and then smoking too much, and then just trying to work and trying to get everything done. I'm just exhausted. But my sister, this sort of stuff bothers me as a person, because growing up in this situation, watching all of this stuff, there's either right or there's wrong. You know what I mean? And so this is kind of what he's talking about. These feelings that we had. You know what I mean? This whole stuff, this emotional honesty. It's like, honesty is everything, and there's either truth or there's not. You know what I mean? It's either true or false. And my dad either truly raped my mother or he truly didn't, and he truly did. And for my sister to sit there and say that that's okay, to me, it's emotional. It's actually just for her own way of handling it, for her to be able to deal with the whole thing, is to just sit there in, not denial, but just in complete sitting on the fence, not looking at it one way or another, not saying anything. That's how she is. She won't say that the abuse was wrong. Like she knows, she was there. She witnessed my mom beating the crap out of me and would not help me out. You know what I mean? And she wouldn't come and comfort me afterwards either. I mean, except for one time she didn't comfort me, but she did try to help me get the bleeding stopped. You know what I mean? But the thing is it's like, I think in her mind that's about the only way she could deal with it. So I've actually had people, like therapists and stuff, tell me that that's probably her way of dealing with it. You know what I mean? And I mean, so I guess I can't hold that against her. But the thing is for me, I can't sit there and say, okay, well, it was okay what my dad did to my mother. It was okay what my mother did to me and what my dad did to the siblings. No, it wasn't okay. You know what I mean? And this is that whole issue of being honest with ourselves. And so we have to be on. There's either truth or there's lies. And truth is truth. And so, for me as a child growing up in this home, witnessing all this stuff and actually being a part of it, I mean, I knew what the truth was. I knew who was responsible here. You know what I mean? It was my parents, and it was their fault, and they were totally making the wrong decisions, and they were totally screwing up as parents. And it's hard for me now to. Of course, I had to forgive them just so I could get the hatred out of my heart, right? So I did that, and that's wonderful because I no longer feel the same way that I used to, which was full of hatred and rage and anger, and which was killing me. It was literally killing me about 4 or 5 years ago, and I replaced that with love and compassion and mercy and all that good stuff, right? But in the meantime, truth is truth. So I still can't ignore what happened, and I will never condone it. But what it's allowed me to do is walk through it as a third party instead of being so emotionally wounded, that I used to be. And it's allowed me to actually see what happened and take a look at it, from the outside, looking at the whole situation, and in justifying the whole thing, that was completely wrong what they did. So it wasn't just me overreacting. I mean, my God, a man forcing himself on a woman who does not, my mother did not have the right to her own body. I mean, my father just thought it was okay for him to just force himself on her repeatedly. I mean, he did this for years. We're not talking one time because he was just horny or something. I mean, this man forced himself on my mother year after year after year after year, and she began to hate him. She hated him. Not only was he forcing himself on her, he was abusing her. And so my siblings, my older brothers, used to try to stop this, and that's, of course, why they would get beat, because my dad didn't want them standing up to him. My brothers were like, when they were teenagers, they were like almost as tall as my dad. Not quite, but I mean, when they were young teens, 12, 13, 14, they were, pretty tall and pretty, my dad's like, both my parents were 6 feet, so I mean, my brothers were tall, and like, my dad didn't want them standing up to him. And so what would he do? Beat them up. Because they're trying to protect my mother. And so I was talking about this yesterday, that my siblings told my mother many times, I remember this, and years later, I mean, we talked about it, my siblings would tell my mother to get out. You know what I mean? To leave that situation. And there's my sister sitting around thinking, oh, it's okay. And I told her, no, it's not. I said, Dad raped Mom. Like, do you not get this? Marital rape, man. I mean, he raped her. And he raped her. My dad raped my mother in front of me when I was like right around 6 years old. And I remember it. You know what I mean? It was just shocking and horrible. My mother was trying to get away. You know what I mean? Fighting him off. And my dad knew I was on the couch. He knew I was on the other couch because there was so many of us in the house. We were sleeping wherever, right? And my mother was telling him, to leave her alone because I was there in the living room. He didn't care. No, so I mean, this is just it. And for my sister to sit there and say that that's okay, and so I was talking yesterday about the whole fact that I've cut them off. I mean, if it's for that very reason that I cut her off out of my life, then it's good enough for me. You know what I'm saying? I cannot hang around with people who think it's okay to rape somebody. I don't care whether it's a man or a woman or a child. Everybody has the right to their own body. And when somebody says no, they mean no. And they have the right to their own body. And so, see, truth is truth. You know what I mean? So we can't go around, sort of sidestepping the truth, right? And I refuse to do it because I'm one of these people. I am either extreme or I'm not. You know what I mean? And for me, truth is everything. So there's either truth or there's not. And I mean, when my sister sits there and tells me that, well, Mom could have done something about it, or she won't say it was wrong what my dad did. No, you know why? Because she wants to ride the fence. She wants to stay completely out of the whole thing so that nobody knows. She's like a ghost, right? I mean, I had to actually get rid of her on Facebook because she was just watching what I was doing. She was just spying on everybody. She wasn't saying anything. She's paranoid, right? She's just like, she lives in this little shell of a world, and she's a ghost because she will not stand up for what is right, and she will not speak out against what is wrong. And she has never done that, right? She's never been able to say what my dad did to any of us was wrong, what my mother did to any of us was wrong, what my parents did to each other was wrong, and what she did to me was wrong, because my sister was one of my abusers too, because she was just doing what my mom was doing, which was beating the shit out of me, so get me in trouble, right, for no reason. And of course, what it did was it pushed me to be a bad child. I was a good child. I started out good when I was born, right? I started out a perfectly good child, and I was warped and turned into this hateful creature because of what I was experiencing in my home. And my sister was on my mom's, under her radar. My mom actually was not paying much attention to my sister because my mom was paying attention to me, and it wasn't a good thing because I was getting my ass kicked on a regular basis. And I was being told that I was just evil and a bad child, right? And so this is what we're talking about here, all this stuff like these negative critical voices in our vocabulary as far as how we feel about ourselves. That was put on me, I would have never thought that if my parents wouldn't have made me feel that, or my siblings, right? And so my siblings even today, which is why I was talking about this yesterday, nothing's changed. My siblings still feel the same way about me. And they don't have the guts or the balls to come over to my apartment and sit down on the couch with me. And these are siblings that are 5 years older and 16 years older than me. And, you would think that they've got enough maturity at their age to come over and sit down on the couch with me and hold my hand and tell me they are so sorry for what my parents did to me. Because they know they were there. They were part of it. They don't have the balls or the guts to do it. And I refuse to go over and do that for them. And even as a Christian, I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? And it's because they are older and they are the ones who are supposed to do that for me, right? So I refuse to take on that role and do that for them. You know what I mean? I'm just not. You know what I mean? Like, no, they've never taken responsibility for who they are in this family and who they should have been. You know what I mean? So that's why I gripe a lot about the fact that I have no support from them, because I really don't. And then they expect me to show up on Thanksgiving to have Thanksgiving dinner with them, and I'm like, why? Why should I? You know what I mean? Like, what's the purpose? So we can all sit around and I can listen to you talking about what a idiot I am. You know what I mean? No. You know what I mean? No, thank you. Right? This is the thing. I mean, even my dad, I have witnesses. There was a whole group of people sitting here in my apartment when my dad was staying with me. And the stuff that he'd tell me, even the people that were here that were not part of our family friends of his, were astounded. And they were like, what is the matter with your dad? He is messed up. I said, I know he's messed up. And this has driven me crazy for a year, staying with me, and he's got to go. So he finally got a senior's place, thank God, last year. But he was staying with me for a year, driving me absolutely up the wall. And, even other people have seen it. You know what I mean? I mean, he's an evil man, but yet he presents himself to be this beautiful Christian, right? And it's a real drag. So my sister, she's kind of the same way. She presents herself as this humble person of God, right? She just walks around like some sort of a ghost, and she's so sweet to everybody, but in the back of her mind, she hates people, and she hates me. You know what I mean? But she wouldn't say that, but I know what's in her heart. You know what I mean? But she doesn't have the balls to say what she thinks, right? Which I do. And so, because when I was a child, I mean, I either said it or I didn't, and I got beat either way, right? I mean, if I was standing up for instance, for one of my brothers or whatever, and I didn't like what was happening to one of my brothers because my dad was kicking him or punching him or something, which my dad was quite often doing to my brothers, and beating them around the living room, I would speak up. I would speak out. My sister would go and sit in the bedroom, and she wouldn't even cry. She'd just hum and just dissociate. I'm sure that's what she was doing, was just dissociation. She would just go and hide and, be somewhere else a million miles away, right? Or go with her friends, right? She would take off. And I'd sit there and I'd say, you leave my brother alone. It's like, don't you treat my brother like that. I mean, I was like a young kid, right? So my dad would come over and slap me around, you know what I mean? And I didn't mind. I was like, you know what? I'm speaking out. I'm speaking up. I don't care. And then, other situations, my mom would be calling me names, calling me a whore and a slut and all this, and I'd be like, I am not a whore. I'm not a slut. And by saying that, I could either be beaten or not, right? I mean, depending on her mood, right? I could just walk in a room and I could be beaten. So, slapped around and just shoved into walls and told I was going to be killed. I mean, these were horrible people doing horrible things. And my sister sits there and says, oh, well, no big deal, right? Well, no, it was a big deal. So, see, that's why, this whole thing of trying to hang around my dysfunctional family just doesn't make any sense. But this is that whole issue of, emotional honesty and being honest with ourselves, right? And it's not taking responsibility for the abuse, because it's not our fault, right? I mean, my God, how can we be responsible for that? Like he says here, the hardest thing for any of us to do is have compassion for ourselves. As children, we felt responsible for the things that happened to us, right? We blamed ourselves for the things that were done to us. So many people do. Like I say, I didn't, but lots of people do. And for the deprivations we suffered. So there's nothing more powerful in this transformational process than being able to go back to that child who still exists within us and say, it wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just a little kid. So this is quote unquote from Robert Burney, probably from his book. It's like excerpts from his book, right? And this is just so true. I mean, my God, it's not our fault, And he says we need to have internal boundaries with and between the emotional and mental components of our being so that we can feel our feelings without being the victim of them or victimizing others with them. That's what I've had to do. This is exactly where I'm at for the last 4 years, is learning how to feel the feelings without being the victim of them or victimizing others with them. You know what I mean? Causing other people, basically dragging them into the pain around me, you know what I mean? Like in this show, I'm specifically talking about this stuff. So obviously people who are listening are kind of, that's why I say, it's a listen at your own discretion. You listen with, because you want to, and it's your own choice, right? But I mean, I'm talking about, which I was doing before, this whole codependency thing, even with friends and other relationships, not so much, because I haven't had much to do with my family for many years now, right? Thank God. But I've had some friends that I actually was hoping they could help me out and take away my pain. And in doing so, I was kind of putting that burden on them, that they would be the ones that would be able to take away my pain. And actually 2 or 3 of my friends actually lost because of that. They could not deal with my woundedness, you know what I mean? It's unfortunate because we had some good times. I wasn't depressed all the time, but I think they realized after a while that they were not going to be able to do it for me, and that they weren't going to be able to I don't know, for some reason they just couldn't keep on in the relationship. And these were just good friends. But, the one person who never gave up on me was my sweetheart in God. Thank you, Father. Hallelujah. And my sweetheart never gave up on me either, and he loves me very much. And he's a good man. And I've had to really separate my stuff from the past really from him, because he was not abused as a child. And so he doesn't understand how, like he when he met me and we talked, and I told him about my past and stuff. I had a nightmare, actually, is what happened, and I woke up and I was crying, and he was just like, "What's wrong?" And I told him what was going on, and then a while later I told him again what had happened to me as a child and my family, and he of course wants to help me, to heal and to feel better, right? But I just learned to keep that separate from him so that he doesn't have to suffer with me, because I think that's really sad. You know what I mean? Like he loves me and he supports me totally, and he totally believes in what I'm doing. He read my book and he thinks it's good, that I'm on this healing journey, and he's happy for me, and I think that's awesome. He's never given up on me. I've never given up on him, and we just never will. So never give up on yourself, and you never give up on this life. My sweetheart's been fighting terminal liver disease, and for a long time, and he's end stage right now, but he's not giving up. He wakes up in the hospital a couple of days ago. He's like, "I'm not giving up, honey. I'm not giving up." No, he's not giving up. You don't give up, not at all. It's not an option. You just keep going. Some days are really bad. Some days are better. Make sure you reach out, and if you have to, you phone a crisis line. I will. If I have to, I will phone the crisis line. I am sticking it out because I'm going to win this fight. And you know what? I'm so thankful to be able to say that. So you do the same thing, right? And stick around, right? Make sure you do. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you later. I'm sure I'll be on this weekend, so in the mornings. Have a great day. Bye-bye.